You've made it to Chiro Hustle Live. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This week's episode is brought to you by Clothes for Chiro, Legacy Wealth Management, Posture Screen, Imaging Services, Chiro Thin, Universal Tractioning Systems, Chiro Moguls, Zingit Solutions, Dr. Peter Goldman's Zone School of Healing, Evers Coaching Systems, Rhino Coaching, Chiro Matchmakers, Bax Max, 5-Star Management, and the Goodman Factor. Let's hustle. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Jim Chester with the Chiro Hustle live stream. I have DB Bedford coming in from Oakland, California, and I am coming in from Grand Junction, which is in the Grand Valley on the western slope of Colorado. And I moved here to get away from everybody and hear the birds chirp. But before we dive into this episode, DB, this is brought to us by Imaging Services, and that is Michael Tokash. And if you guys want to reach out to him, he's always giving his cell phone number out because he wants to be that connected to you. So reach out to me. I'll put you in touch with Mike Tokash, or you can go to this web address that's going to float on the bottom of the screen right now. And their web address is called theimagingservices.com. So DB, we've been following each other's paths for a little while now. I saw you coming up, helping people with this big idea called emotional intelligence. Sure. And let's riff on that for a little bit, and then we'll talk about this 4-dimensional lifestyle that we talk about in chiropractic, the eat right, think right, move right, and get adjusted. And before we jump into it, though, what is EI, and what does that mean to you, and what have you been doing for multiple communities now?
All right. Thank you, Rhino, for having me on. Emotional intelligence to me is this, in its simplest form, is the ability to be able to process emotionally charged situations through a logical lens. Most of the times when we are faced with something that, taps into our emotions, the higher the emotion, the lower the logic in most situations. And so emotional intelligence gives you permission to be in your feelings, so to speak, understand how you feel. That's the emotion piece of it. And the intelligent part is what you do with those feelings, right? And so being someone who struggled, with that, growing up, and had many situations where I clearly did not use emotional intelligence, observing so many people in different communities, whether it be professional or personal, when they get in their feelings, the rude, the discourteousness, the non-productiveness, the strain of relationships, to me was somewhat of an epidemic. And so I felt like I wanted to be the credible messenger in this space to show up and raise awareness to as many people as possible of the importance of looking at the world through the lens of emotional intelligence.
I think that as I got to know more about why you came up with this motivator that you're a part of, let's talk a little bit about how you got there, because I know it wasn't the easiest path to getting to, clarity and discernment and objectivity and learning how to tie your past experience together to make a better outcome for everybody now that you're helping with the system. Right.
Well, really for me, it's one of those journeys, where you grow up in a neighborhood that, I like to deem it the concrete jungle, so to speak. And, at a young age, young adulthood and teenage, you live in a space where you get up every day and either you're the lion or you're the gazelle, right? Like either you're going to eat, be eaten. And so it got to a point where, and I was kind of afraid of, I was getting tired of being afraid of the dark. So if you will, so if you don't want to be afraid of the dark anymore, then you have to become the dark. And so I started leading my life through this violent lens. And I was just that guy that would, I always like to say, it's true what they say, right? Hurt people hurt people. And so I was transferring my pain and my anger to people, victimizing at a young age, getting myself in a lot of trouble. And that spanned from like 13 to 23. And then I end up being in a situation where I kind of lost my temper in a moment and really tried to, take someone's life with this story I was telling myself about a situation. And when I was on my way, to prison, I was sitting in a cell. It kind of came to me like, and really quick, about 3 days into my jail term, I realized I didn't have to do that. Like all of a sudden, it was just clear, like you didn't have to do that. But in the moment and the time leading up to it, you couldn't have told me nothing else. Like I felt like I had to do it. But it was, I learned it was the time. I do something in my life I call reverse engineering. I like to go back over these life events and to see what went well, what didn't go so well, how can I improve upon it, And when I look back at that, I'm like, prior up to the incident, I felt like I was totally right and justified what I did. After I got in trouble behind it, and then, and I'm sitting in this cell and now I'm with this heavy consequence, all of a sudden the option was clear to me that you didn't have to do it. And so what that told me is that we got to be careful with these emotional storyboards that we create in our head about situations. And what I've learned on this journey, because I was able to, change my life situation around. I was given an opportunity by the judge in that time. And so I ended up not doing the prison. So I did like a year, and they gave me what they call a joint suspension. So I just got probation terms. And within that term, I started to spin the narrative of my life around. I learned about perspective, that you could look at things totally different, right? And get different results. But of course, back then, I didn't know that. I started taking all these different elements and realigning them and following them as my own kind of guided footprint, right? To go from being a 4-time felon to ended up being a peace officer working in the same facility where I spent all my time at. And to me, that's how powerful emotional intelligence was, by changing my perspective, fostering new relationships, looking at the world through this more logical lens. And when I seen the power it was having over my life, I just knew that it was time to start to introduce it to other people. And so I ended up working in law enforcement for 15 years. I recently retired 2 years ago. Took an early retirement because something vibrated in me, was like, it's time to get out here and spread this message, right, to as many people as possible. And I just seen the value in it, and it was just a natural thing to do. And so to make some of these decisions that's creating a type of success in my life, and for me to overcome that much of adversity, I knew that it would be helpful for those who have been through what I've been through, but extremely helpful for those that have not been through as much. And if they see that these principles have worked on a bigger, more threatening scale, and some of this day-to-day stuff that people go through and kind of make poor decisions on, it can improve their quality of their life and their relationships.
A lot of those things that you said made me circle up in my head and think about, well, was DB making these decisions based on low self-esteem? Was he doing these things to impress other people around him? What led you to, I don't know, you said you reverse engineer it. So if you say you reverse engineer it, were you making these things because these decisions based on low self-esteem, or are you making these decisions based on wanting people to like you?
Both. Yeah, for sure. Low self-esteem. I mean, you start off as a skinny kid, with the crooked teeth in a new neighborhood. Definitely self-esteem. Do I want to be liked? Absolutely. Do I want to be included? Absolutely. Right. And so definitely is the beginning of the decision-making process. And then there's this space where, and we all, no matter how you look at it, everybody searches for status in some way, right? Like whether you attribute to where you work or where you at, sociably, or, where you live at, like people, where your kids go to school, like everybody wants a level of status. And when you grow up in those type of arenas, that the low-hanging fruit for status, right, is being connected to that, that neighborhood element or that gang element or whatever. That's the fastest way to get it, to be known for something on that level. So I would certainly say it had everything to do with the self-esteem and wanting to be included in.
Yeah, I find that so often when I get a chance to meet people that make change and they go on to the future and they learn from their past and they become a better version of themselves. Most of the time, people just they didn't have good leadership and they didn't have good decision-making skills. And, we, at that point in our lives, we have a lot of different, emotions running through us. We have a lot of different things that matter to us, and we can't see what it looks like for us 20 years down the line.
So I'm going to partially agree with you.
Okay.
I'm partially, and because I understand exactly what you're coming from. I don't know if, not even just myself, that guys in the element, I can't say that they don't have leadership skills, because they lead people. They just lead them in the wrong direction, right? They get people to do the work through their influence. I think the part that I will come back around and connect with you is that, but the person in that space doesn't have the right influential person that they admire to show them another way, right? And so for me, it came in a totally unconventional way, right? From the same judge who had put me in jail so many times. And by all accounts, this was not a relationship that I could have dreamed of in a million years, right? And for him to have discernment in that space and say, you know what? Essentially, you have all this influence, you have these superpowers in your community. Why not use these superpowers for good and see what happens instead of bad? Which is when I talked about, I mentioned perspective. I had never really heard that perspective, and I learned as I grew in this space, it's hard to see the picture when you're sitting inside the frame, right? And so you have to be able to kind of have this out of body experience to be like, okay, let me take a objective look of who I am and what it is that I'm doing and where can I make those adjustments. Let me get out of my feelings, right? That's telling me, let me challenge my beliefs that's holding me back, and let me come back and reconnect with this on another way. Let me start playing chess and start playing checkers. And when you start to do that, you do start to see different results. You get different vibes, you get different connections. And I'm still searching for status. I still appreciate status, but I want it for a different reason now, right? And so when I get up every day, I'm staying passionate about, what it is that I want and in my purpose, because we know that the two most important days of our lives, right, are the day that we were born and then the day we discovered why, right? And most of us are going to get out of here without ever discovering our why. And so I feel like I discovered my why. I didn't really know it back then, but I didn't even understand that there was a why to be discovered, right? So, and so now that I understand that, then it's, sky's the limit. And I know that, we never know what the future holds, but I do know that I'm moving in the future in a way that's purposeful and it's helping people along the way. And every day that somebody comes back to me and lets me know how emotional intelligence has made them better in any way, and they accredit it to my teachings, then I know I'm in the right space, and that space I can stay in from here on out.
And, one of the things that I wanted to touch on is when people are at that age where they're not making good decisions, they're going off of instinct. And they're not going off of any type of a system that they've learned, really. They're just going off of connectivity and instinct. And back to that old saying, go for what you know. And that's what that's what a lot of times people do, is they fall into that trap of that's what's common, and they can't think beyond what's common to elevate their consciousness and their emotional intelligence to get to the next level. And then they do fall into the trap of mediocre activity. They fall into the trap of false leadership. and they fall into the trap of doing stuff that doesn't serve them or anyone else. And they do it, and they're not serving anybody, especially their damn selves. So they're already going against the current because it doesn't actually make them feel good either. So,
Right.
So let's play a quick game. If you had a chance to talk to like a 16-year-old version of yourself back in the day, what is one piece of advice you would have told yourself?
Slow down, right? Slow down. I would have told myself to slow down, and I would have told myself that this money that you're making, invest it, right? Instead of just spending it. Right. That would be, to me, that would be the number one thing I would tell him, because there was a lot of money going through his hands, and he could, I could be owning tons of real estate, what I'm saying, right now. I remember this trap house we were operating out of. I remember that the people came and wanted to sell it to us for $30,000. And we laughed at them. We was like, man, nobody want this, you know what I'm saying, this piece of junk. Because we wasn't there, and we had shoe boxes full of money. We could have just really literally cashed it out, and we just didn't have, you don't know what you don't know. There was this field we used to hustle out of in my 20s. Like all our homies, we used to go stand in this vacant field, had been vacant for years. And it was storage. It used to be a pickle factory or whatever. None of us never thought to put our money together to buy the land. And you go by there right now, it's probably about 24 units. Like little townhouses sitting on that. And that could have been us, and that could have been something we could have been, generationally, we could have, put ourselves and our families on if we had just had, back to your point, had someone with the influence to come and say, hey, y'all standing here, y'all making all this money, but did anybody ever think about asking somebody to buy this land? Because we never did.
That's a really good story. Now I want to play the game fast forward into the future. There's one of your homeboys that has a 16-year-old that's doing some stuff that might not be the best decision making. What would you say to this 16-year-old kid that might be on the wrong path right now?
You've made it to Chiro Hustle Live. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession.
This week's episode is brought to you by Close for Chiro, Legacy Wealth Management, Posture Screen, Imaging Services, Chiro Thin, Universal Tractioning Systems, Chiro Moguls, Zingit Solutions, Dr. Peter Goldman's Zone School of Healing, Evers Coaching Systems, Rhino Coaching, Chiro Matchmakers, Bax Max, 5-Star Management, and the Goodman Factor. Let's hustle.
I would probably try to convince him I would try to move him to that why question. What is your why? Like, what is it that you are, why are you doing what you're doing? Because nobody ever asked us that. And I think if you are forced to if you're challenged to try to figure out what that why is, I think it'll start to shift the decision that you're making. Because a lot of times we have done stuff multiple times in our life, and we have no idea why we did it. I have no idea why we did it, and so I think I would challenge a young person to ask themselves, why are you doing what you're doing?
I love it, man. This conversation gets better as we go. I know a lot of the stuff we discussed before we started here. One of the things I wanted to touch on with you is your emotional intelligence experience that you've started as a 30-day program. Let's talk about that a little bit and how my audience, the chiropractic audience, might be able to benefit from that.
Okay. Yeah. So thanks for asking. So basically, Emotional Intelligence is the platform. I created this 30-day EI experience where one could digitally online learn about emotional intelligence on a day-to-day basis. And so what happens is that every day a coaching video comes to their account. It's 5 to 7 minutes long, and it releases what we call the EI secrets. Each secret is basically an element of emotional intelligence that you can, have a reflective look with yourself on how the secret applies to you. You're challenged to take a look around and see how it's showing up in other people's space. And for the next 24 hours, you're tasked with just focusing on that secret. And every day these secrets build up on you. And so after 30 days, you can't help but to be looking at the world through this lens of emotional intelligence. And so, for example, the secrets is emotional grudges, right? People tend to hold these emotional grudges and not understanding how that may be holding them back in their everyday lives, right? And, an old wise man once said that, holding a grudge against someone, right, is like taking poison yourself and expecting the other person to die. But people understand that the impact that that's having on them. So we help them free themselves and start looking at things differently. So that's kind of how the EI experience goes on a day-to-day basis. And then they get a book to go with it when they're done.
That's so cool, man. Have you seen people like giving themselves permission to be better versions of themselves and forgiving themselves for past mistakes that they made?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes. And I also see people feeling empowered, right? They're feeling empowered because they realize they are look the world through a lens that most people that's in front of them are not looking through. So they take pride in avoiding a confrontation. They take pride in person cut them off that they used to lose their cool, but now they don't. They take pride of when they go to work and this colleague, this coworker, they used to be annoying them, is no longer an issue for them. And so they start to find the value in it, and they just show up differently with their chest stuck out. And to me, that's priceless.
Yeah, and then when you start creating a culture and changing a whole environment within a workplace, I know you said you do some stuff with the corporate America, and you do some stuff with military, and I know that there's a big conversation there, because when you start changing the mindset of people, you start changing the outcomes.
Yes. And so in the corporate setting, what winds up happening is that more employers are starting to realize, like, the technical skills and the degrees and all that stuff is good, but what they're looking for is people to be the top performer they said they were going to be when they first came to the interview. But somehow between the time they were at the interview to where they are now, they have lost that drive. It means they can't do the job, but they show up every day not feeling the job. Man, they start to realize that it's a lot of mitigating factors, right? Whether it's their personal life, whether it's the supervisor, whether it's the change in policy or whatever, and giving someone the skill set to understand that you're entitled to feel how you feel, but you're also responsible for how you act, no matter how you feel, right? So to know, I don't really like the way things were changed, but I'm here to do a job, and I'm going to give it my best, regardless if I don't like the manager, the co-worker, the policy, my cubicle. I committed to being the best version of myself, and to be separate that and still perform is where the power is at. And this is what companies are looking for.
And that's the next man up attitude, is if you're working hard, there's going to be a guy that falls out of favor because he became despondent, and they're going to be looking at DB and be like, yo, he shows up every day. He works hard. He's happy. Let's go ahead and give him this promotion. And that's how things happen.
Yep. People are looking for, and then also I think employers are starting to just really understand the value of just positive energy. A lot of times people talk about the morale in their company, but they think that the morale is driven by policies, and it's not that, right? It's and there's always somebody in a company that everybody know, right? This person is not cool, but nobody's doing anything about it, right? Everybody know who it is, but everybody just accept it, just like, who they are. And that's not okay, because that, there's something that we teach in this EI platform about vibing responsibly, right? We like, they say you need to drink responsibly, like you need to vibe responsibly, like you need to show up and bring good vibes. And when you're not bringing them, emotional intelligence gives you that space to have that conversation with that person through that lens. So they're not, feel like they're getting personally selected out. We're creating a standard. You know what I mean? In these workplaces that a supervisor can now bring you in and ask you, well, help me understand where emotional intelligence showed up in that interaction, right? And then it challenged that person to take a look at themselves, right? And figure out what to do next. And then there's a skill set that they can give them to move forward. So it's just not this casual conversation. It's not just personal opinion. And we're talking about a requirement, right? That we're looking for all of our employees to adhere to create better service, create whatever their objective is for the company.
I love the fact that you've given resource to conflict resolution for a team and something as a conflict resolution for the individual. And I just love the fact that you've taken concept and ideas and put them into a strategy. I think so many times when people think about it, they think that they have to do this alone. It's great to know that they have resources like you that have developed protocols to help people and have a system that gets people to an outcome, and they can do that in 30 days. Quick thing, speed round. I know you got to jump and I got to get going, but if people wanted to work with you, how do they do that?
So if you want to work with me directly, you start off by giving me an email, db.bedford@neverworry.com. But I'm on all social media under I Never Worry, so pretty easy to locate. And that would probably be the easiest way to get a conversation started. Send me an email and ask for more information.
Yeah, I think that's a good start too. And how did it change your life when you wrote the book, I Never Worry?
Tremendously. It gave me credibility with people who may not have known me directly. It gave them an opportunity to get to know me, because the book is written, it's laced with emotional intelligence skills, but it's done through telling. So it gives people an opportunity to see my growth and how EI applied to me as a person. And one of the things I want to say about emotional intelligence, what makes it unique and having more of a higher impact than a lot of other professional development stuff that's out there, is that emotional intelligence is personal development. Right? A lot of times people overlook that you can't have professional development if you don't have personal development, right? You can give me all the professional skills you want, but if I show up to you in a space where I haven't had an emotional detox, I'm not in tune with how my vibes are, it doesn't matter what you give me on there. It's going to come out, not what you would like it to be. And so emotional just gives you that personal development that naturally transitions over into professional development.
And I know there's one step further. Last question. Well, two more questions. You've been doing live events recently. How has that changed your brand?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that. So the seminars that we do, I think it has added a lot of value to it, because now this is kind of the most, it's a very high energy social learning environment. We got the DJ, for those who drink, we got the rum punch, and we have this very social atmosphere going on. And then we settle them down and we deliver, very powerful strategies of emotional intelligence, awareness to it, give them the fundamentals, and give them an opportunity to grow into the community and become part of the community, not just buy a book, not just take a course, but become part of a community as everybody understand how to use this and add value to their lives.
Yeah, I think everybody just wants to have more contribution and they want to show up as a better version of themselves. So last question I have for you is, why should everybody get adjusted by a chiropractor?
Oh, most definitely, because there are a whole bunch of hidden value that you've never even thought about. More than likely, most people, including myself, a chiropractor, it doesn't sound inviting, and it sounds like you got to be all the way broken, right? And it's just about your back. And what I've learned about going to see a chiropractor, there's so many other benefits and elements, from headaches, right, to stress, to, just a whole lot of different things that you may not even be aware of. So I would say if you haven't went and seen a chiropractor, if you have limited beliefs about what you think it is, again, like I said earlier, it's hard to see the picture when you're sitting inside the front. I would ask you to take a step back, right? I would ask you to disconnect and reconnect to the idea that going to see a chiropractor could be one of the most game-changing things you've done in your life.
Yeah, because we believe that when you get adjusted, you return back to source. And that's, when you have no interference, your body gets a chance to express itself properly. And that's through emotional, that's through physical. So if we want to talk about physical intelligence, when we have the mind right and we have the body right, all else follows. So we start eating right, we start moving right, our relationships improve, our status improve, the way we treat our spouse improves, the way we treat our kids, the way we show up to work, all that changes. Most of the time people think that they have to be in extreme pain for there to be a need to change the way they think or the way they take care of their body.
Right, absolutely. No, I agree.
Well, I know that we're about to jump, but is there anything I didn't ask you that you would like to share with our audience today?
No, I think you pretty much covered it, man. I just appreciate being on your platform. I think at the end of the day, whether you learn emotional intelligence through me or someone else, I just would encourage anybody who bears witness to this interaction between you and I, take a strong consideration to read up on emotional intelligence and embrace it as a way of life. It will take nothing away from what you already know. It will only add value to all the incredible spaces that you're already in. Because in the next, I want to say 18 months to 2 years, emotional intelligence is going to be that one thing that everybody's going to ask you. It's going to be a personal asset that people are going to ask you to do business with them, to work in their company, because people understand that conflict is going to arise. And people understand that most of the relationships, business or otherwise, have been strained because somebody been in their feelings. And so we got to start changing that. And so if you want to get ahead of the game, if you're trying to be ahead of the curve, emotional intelligence is what you're going to need to grow personally and professionally.
I 100% agree. And I know that there's a few people on this right now. Just comment in where you guys are watching in from. And if you're watching this on replay, hashtag replay in the comments. And if you got value from this conversation today, hashtag value into the comments down there. And DB, will you put a clickable down there in the comments when we're done so people know where to go to your website?
Absolutely. Will do.
Well, I'm going to say thank you to everybody for being on with us today. If you guys are looking for x-ray at your chiropractic office, reach out to Mike Tokash. I'm going to float his website at the bottom of the screen again, and that is at theimagingservices.com. DD, man, I appreciate you. I look forward to helping you on your movement as you go forward, whether it's as a colleague or as somebody that can help you with influence. Always appreciate your words of wisdom. And is it okay if I go ahead and close out?
Yes, sir. I appreciate you, and likewise on the invitation both ways. I appreciate your authentic connection, right? It's a pleasure meeting you and growing together, man. So this is not the last time they'll see us together.
Yeah, man. So you guys are just one story away. Keep hustling. I'll see you on the next emotional intelligence conversation.
All right. Peace out.
All right.
Thank you for listening to Chiro Hustle Live. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.